Thank you, Glenn. My name is Dave. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's April 14th, 1983. I got sober when I was 9. Just want to see who's listening. Um, yeah, I met Glenn on the morning meeting. I was riding back and forth, doing some stuff for a family business, and stumbled on the sober start, and it was crazy. I mean, these people were up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the pregame was insane. There was just a crazy cast of characters, and I said, well, gosh, I got to hang with these guys. They seem like a lot of fun. I was, I put a little spit shine. My sponsor's Roger McMahon down in Bethany Beach, Delaware. He always tells me to suit up and show up and throw on a jacket and tie out of respect for Alcoholics Anonymous and for my recovery. So I do that even when I'm on Zoom. I was doing a little praying and meditating about just exactly what my responsibility is and what I'm supposed to do here. And I talk about what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. I have the scene next to me. I have a bed that's made. I make my bed every day because my sponsor told me to. I call him every day at 8:35, and I've been doing that for the last, I don't know, 20 years because he told me to. He said, when I started work with him, I had 26 years of recovery, and I'm like, well, why do I have to call you every day? That's ridiculous. He goes, well, you're undisciplined. And I thought that was a little harsh, right? But he was correct. So I make my bed every day and call my sponsor, and I still do that. He's getting a little bit older. His health is failing, and I worry about him. But I still engage and make that call. I was, born and raised in North Plainfield, New Jersey. My dad was in the Navy. He was 20 years old. He met my mom when he went on leave with his buddy Travis to Mobile, Alabama. They were stationed in Pensacola. He met a little 16-year-old girl named Barbara Ann. They eloped a month later, and they had 5 boys by the time she was 26 years old in New Jersey. I mean, I don't even know how you do that, right? So naturally, my dad's working for the phone company, and she, you know, she's got a baby, um, a 4, 5, 6 year old. She had, Irish triplets, um, and a 9 year old. I mean, I don't even know how she still completes full sentences, but she does. Um, I have a son and a daughter, and I just can't imagine. So I was raised, and she brought us to church every week, and we had to get dressed up. And I remember taking pictures at Easter by the forsythia bush outside, and from the outside in, everything looked good. You know, you did not disrespect your parents. You didn't talk back to your parents. You in the summertime, you went outside in the morning, and you came back when the street lights came on, right? There was no internet. There was no, you just went to the playground. And, that's the way you did things. So when I was about 8 years old, I got tangled up with some of the neighborhood kids, and, some stuff happened to me that really shouldn't happen to an 8-year-old. And at that point, I sought relief. And the first time picked up a drink was New Year's Eve when I was going in from sixth grade to seventh grade. I drank myself into a blackout, threw up on the kitchen floor, and my parents found me laying in my own vomit when they came home that night because I found all the whiskey bottles and rye and just started tipping bottles in my mouth. And, there was about 8 minutes of pure bliss, followed by, devastating mental and physical anguish. But that was really what kicked it off, right? I remember my dad would say, "Get me a beer from the fridge," and I would take those fat Bud colds, and I would kind of chug half of it, and I'd get to him, and he'd look at it and go, "Where's, what's going on here?" And he would, you knucklehead, and they pat your head and rub you, and that was about the size of it. Now they throw you in rehab, but back then it was like, boys will be boys, right? And then I started weekend drinking and smoking weed. I would go out on the weekends, but I drank like a Viking from the beginning. It was just an absolute, I would disappear. I remember going to see the Grateful Dead at Meadowlands on a Friday. My mom said, "You're not going. They smoke pot there. I don't want you to go." And I snuck out at 6 in the morning and met my guys around the corner and, left on a Friday and came back on Sunday. And I was 13. I was a hellion. I was incorrigible. I was the broken arrow, the black sheep. It was just like, it was crazy. Um, the night before my SATs, I'm 17 years old, and I drank myself into a blackout because, why study and prepare for your future, right? Most people are, concerned with the big test and they want to place well and go to college. I just went out and got hammered, drunk. I hit a tree doing 70 in a blackout. I, to this day, don't remember any of it. I broke my femur in half, 6 ribs, broke my nose, my clavicle. I ripped a subclavian artery to my heart, collapsed a lung, broke my sternum. There's 5 people in the Rutgers Medical Journal that survived my injuries. I believe they still study me at the Rutgers Medical School. I was in the hospital for a month, 11th grade going into 12th grade. The doctor said your lung collapsed, so don't smoke because if it collapses again, you're going to lose it. I was like, gotcha. Don't drink because we put an artery graft in your subclavian artery that if you drink, alcohol will literally deteriorate that artery. So don't drink. And I was like, gotcha. So I'm 17. I'm starting to feel better. I get out of the hospital. It's summertime, and I go to a party nearby my house, and they hand me a solo cup of beer. I take a sip, and my buddy's like, "Dude, are you supposed to be drinking?" And I'm like, "Well, the doctor said it was okay if I had a beer." And they're like, "Okay." And they pass a joint around. I take a hit, and my buddy's like, "Dude, are you supposed to be smoking?" And I said, "Well, the doctor said it was okay if I smoked one joint." And they were like, "Who's your doctor? What are you talking about? Like, who does this?" So I am incapable now of having a beer or taking a hit off a joint. I don't know that, right? I don't know that alcoholism is my problem. So from 17 to 21, the next 4 years were, like a living hell. My parents had almost lost me. I almost died in front of them. Now I'm out drinking and driving, and my dad's shaking me in the morning. "Where's the car?" And I go, "I don't know." Right. My 21st birthday, I remember I was at this guy Tommy's house, and it was the 80s, and they had this giant mound of cocaine. I snorted my name in cocaine, David William Miller. I drank almost a case of St. Pauli girl beer, and I had a batch of hash brownies. And I drove, to Connecticut in a blackout, um, with a 65 Chevy Nova 3 on the tree. I don't know if any of you know the Sawmill River Parkway. It's precarious to drive that during the day fully sober. So I wake up on a couch and some guy shaking me going, dude, who are you? I go, I'm Jimmy Miller's brother. He goes, he's in the next dorm. So I missed, right? I mean, you know, and that's after I almost killed myself. I remember I would just drink and smoke and snort cocaine, and my artery graft in my neck would just course. And I remember distinctly going, I really don't care if it explodes. It would almost be a relief, right? Just blow. Who cares? And I would wake up the next day, just like, ugh. I got to do this. I got to do this all over again. It was, and then one day I woke up coming out of a blackout, one of those horrible mornings. My mattress was on the floor. I was living with my parents, so I can crawl up the stairs. And we had old wooden stairs, so you had to know which one creaked and which one didn't, because if you hit the third one on the left, and then that light would flip on upstairs, and you'd be like, "Oh, here we go." And my dad was standing there. He goes, "Listen, you're either going to get help or get out, because your mom and I can't watch you kill yourself." And they made a couple phone calls. At the time, my mom was on the board of Muhlenberg Hospital in Plainfield. Sitting next to her was a woman named Mrs. Anderson. Her son Gary, who's now dead, was in the program, and the guy sitting across from her was Coach B, who used to be my Pop Warner football coach, and he was sober 6 years. So God's orchestrating this, right? My mom's got a son who's dying. She doesn't know what to do. So she casually starts talking with the woman next to her. My son's in recovery. Maybe I can ask him if he can give your son some help. So, of course, they get the phone number. My dad said, "You're calling this guy." I go, "I don't want to call him." He goes, "Call him or get out." I was like, my dad told me to call you. And, the guy was like, I'll come and get you tonight. And I was like, "I don't know." And my dad's like, "Yes, go." And I was like, "Whatever." I was just doing it to get him off my case, off my back. I just didn't want to get yelled at anymore. So this guy, Gary, pulls up in a 944 T-top Porsche convertible. I was like, nice. If I go to AA, I'll get a Porsche. That has not happened yet. So we went to a Wednesday night meeting in Summit, New Jersey. And this guy was telling me his story on the way up there about how he stole cop cars and beat up cops. And I'm, halfway up there, I'm like, who is this guy? And why am I in the car with him? He seemed kind of dangerous. When I got into that meeting, there was a kid in the room that was 16. And I was like, what is he doing here? I'm way too young, but this kid is ridiculously young. And there was a girl in there that I knew vaguely through high school. There were some pretty girls. They talked about, going to dances and, playing softball. I was hooked by the fellowship. There seemed to be something going on here. I'm not sure exactly what it is. And I think that's what happens with newcomers. And what I try to do with newcomers is if there was no joy, why would they stick around? If they're not attracted to our demeanor and our laughter, So I stayed. And I remember I got a 90-day pin. They used to give out 90-day pins in Jersey, and I had it pinned on my members only jacket, which was, I was pretty slick. Um, I got a year, then I got 2 years, and I got 3 years, and I was not drinking, going to meetings. I wasn't really hanging with the big book people because they kind of scared me. You guys were talking about steps, but I'm not really that sick, so I don't have to do all the stuff that you people are doing. Um, so I hung around the fringes of AA, fellowshipping for as long as I possibly could. Somewhere with about 4 years, I reluctantly went up to the Garden State Young People's Conference. My sponsor said, just find somebody, write your 4-step, and dump it on them. And I did. I found a guy named Brian, and I told him my 5th step. We stayed by the campfire and talked until the morning, and that's where I stayed for the next, I don't know how many years. My sponsor would say, what about 6? I'm like, well, if you look in the big book, 6, there's not really a whole lot there, right? 6 and 7. So I kind of stayed frozen, suffering in untreated alcoholism. Now, I'm nicest to know. I'm best all around. I could joke and laugh and show up to a meeting and pretend like I'm okay. But inside, I'm tortured by untreated alcoholism. I don't know that at the time, but I'm dying of untreated alcoholism. I'm suffering horribly. And I ran into a guy named Rick C. And I was down in Ocean City, Maryland. I had a dream job working as a golf professional, teaching a golf course that was exquisite. And yet I was a psychopath. I was an untreated, angry, raging alcoholic. He took me to a place called Mellow Beach in the middle of the day at lunch, and he whips out his big book like it was a Bible. Like I'm looking around like, hey, buddy, take it easy. There's people here, right? And he read page 62, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of self-fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. I remember poking the lion's cage in all of my relationships and wondering why everybody was always pissed off at me. What did I do? Passively, aggressively poke the stick and wonder why people around me are always disturbed and angry at me. So our troubles, we think, is of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. What, me? Me? We alcoholics must be rid of the selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. So in 6 and 7, we learned about our defects of character. And I was just absolutely stalled there. I had no idea why I was propelled by anger, fear, resentment. I had no control over my emotions. I had no clarity, no awareness. I was asleep, being, I kind of envision it as being, holding on to a flagpole in a hurricane. The inflatable puppets outside of a used car dealership, right? Waving around. That was how I was emotionally propelled through life. I was completely just disturbed and fearful and angry. And, you know, one minute I'm laughing and joking, next minute I'm crying and depressed. I had terrible bouts of depression. I couldn't understand what was going on. Um, so right about that time, I went to my wife at the time and I said, listen, I noticed you're drinking a lot. I think you might have a drinking problem, and I think we should go to counseling. She said, I don't have a drinking problem. I'm not going to counseling, and I want you to leave. Not really the response I was looking for. Honey, I love you. I'll do anything, is what I was looking for. And she said, go ahead. Don't let the door hit you in the tail. So in about 6 weeks, I left my house. I lost my house, wife, job, car, dog. And I got about 26, 27 years of recovery. And now, I have just lost everything. Sandy Beach was speaking at Sessions by the Sea down in Ocean City, Maryland at the time. And my old sponsor was good buddies with him. So we had some dinner with Sandy, and then he spoke the next morning. And I had all my stuff loaded up in my car. I had a Prius, which was awesome. And my brother Stephen was out in Santa Monica, California. He said, why don't you come hang with me for a couple months and you can, clear out your head. He said, it sounds like your life sucks right now. So I plugged in Santa Monica, California, and I started driving. And I left right after Sandy's talk, and I am just crying and wailing and in tears. And not, I had to pull off the side of the road because I was not crying, but wailing, like gut wrenching, snotty cry. I think I got to Chicago, and I had a job interview for some golf company in Vegas. And I stopped and played what do you call it, craps for the first time, and I won, a whole bunch of money. It almost financed my trip. And I eventually got out to California to see my brother, and the only contact I had in California was Mickey Bush. That was the only phone number I had, so I called Mickey because my old sponsor Rick knew Mickey. He said, I got it coming out. He's needs some help, right? I don't know what their conversation was. It was basically, he's on suicide watch. He's just lost all this stuff. Keep an eye on him. So Mickey would pick me up and take me to meetings, and he would stick me at the door, and he'd say, this is my friend Dave. He fancies himself a comedian. He's just lost all his shit. So, shake hands. So I would shake hands at the door, and everybody knew Mickey. And it was like a who's who of, celebrity Hollywood. Hey, Mick, hey, Mick. And I'm just like shaking hands, and Brentwood, Hollywood, LA. We just went to a whole bunch of meetings. And I was at a meeting one morning, or looking for a meeting in Venice Beach, and it was a Sunday morning meeting. And I saw a guy standing with a clipboard on the corner, and I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to keep the vagrants from getting on set. I said, what are they doing? Filming a movie? I said, well, how do I get on there? He goes, what do you mean, background? I said, yeah. So I filled out some forms and took a picture, and two days later, I'm on Ugly Betty, because I had a tuxedo. My friend said, bring a tuxedo because you're never going to know. You never know if you're going to have to go to a Hollywood opening. So I started to do background work. I ran into this guy at the Saturday. It was a morning meeting at the Unurban Cafe. His name was Gant. And he, when I first got out there, they said, is anybody new? And I said, my name is Dave. And I just got divorced. And I just puked on the table for 10 minutes. And he's like, all right, take it easy. And he took me to um, there's a spiritual realization center in Malibu. It's right on Sunset Boulevard, and it's a circular path that celebrates all religions from all over the world. And he just talked to me. He's very, very kind and sweet. And he gave me a 10 pack of CDs from The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. And I got a job on the L Word, and it was because I had a black car. And it was 3 days, 16 hours a day. I sat in my car and I listened to this tape series. And it talked about when traumatic things happen in our lives. Um, I remember Eckhart was talking about how he was in he was in the subway when he was going through his diminishment. And he remembers seeing a woman on the train, and she was like talking to three people on either side. Nobody was there, and nobody was sitting next to her because they clearly thought she was crazy. They get off the subway. She starts walking towards his building. He's like, "What is she, a patient here? Does she live? Does she work here? What's going on?" She walks into the building. They lose each other, and he goes up to the bathroom upstairs, and he's going to the bathroom, and he goes, "Man, I hope I don't get like that." And he says it out loud. And the guy next to him is like, "Who the hell are you talking to, buddy?" And then he realized, oh my God, I am just like the lady in the subway. The only reason, the only difference is that she's real time in it. You know, you see people who are talking out loud about everything that's going through our heads. But we all have that voice in our head that is going. That is the reason why I drank, to quiet those voices in my head. And it was one of those major revelations in my life. And when I had gone through all this loss and diminishment, it was really quiet in my head. I thought I was losing my mind or having some kind of nervous breakdown. And in fact, I was. It hurt so much to think about what was behind me when I was driving out to California. It was so much pain to look forward. It was so much fear. The only thing that I could do was to watch this blue line on the GPS system and go, oh, wow. And there was a points of interest button that I would hit, and it would say, oh, the largest plexiglass strawberry in Illinois is not 20 miles away. And I would think, oh, the largest Abraham Lincoln head is pretty close. The largest frying pan, the biggest Jesus statue. And I was in the moment for the first time in my life. I was not aware of how I got there or what I was going through, but I wasn't thinking. I wasn't tortured. So that's what God had to do for me. He's like, I want all of you. And in order to get all of you, I am going to remove everything. That's how much I love you. I was, that's in hindsight, of course. At the time, it didn't feel like he loved me. So, I always say to people that are going through diminishment and loss, that's awesome, right? Congratulations. I'm going through a divorce. That's awesome. Congratulations. This is going to be God sending you to a place that you were unable to get through on your own. So this wonderful, wonderful gift of diminishment, and I come back to Maryland, and things have changed. I got a new sponsor in Roger McMahon, and Roger started taking me through the book. So what I'd been avoiding for the last, 26, 27 years, I had no choice. I was like, whatever I have to do, I'll do it. And I went to the primary purpose group every Thursday, 7 o'clock to 8:15, and we studied line by line page by page. And he said, write down in the book, you know, he would always say, write this down. This is what you're going to tell the newcomer. And I'm like, well, what about me? He goes, don't worry about you. It has nothing to do with you. None of this has anything to do with you. I'm like, that can't be true, right? So for 12 years, year after year, I wrote notes in the margin. This is what you're going to tell the newcomer. This is who they're talking about in the book. They're talking about Bill Dotson. They're talking about AA number 4. They're talking about Silkworth. They're talking about Broadhurst. They're talking about history year after year. So now I am equipped when someone comes to me and says, hey, would you be able to take me through the work? Yes. And you know what I do? I just read the notes that my sponsor told me to write down. It's not rocket science, right? So I've been able to do that. When I got back, I went through the work. I eventually got divorced and continued to live. I eventually got and Glenn, just give me a heads up when I got maybe 3 to 5 left. Two things I'm horrible at is money and relationships. So my sponsor said, how about we get a career that's stabilizing? And I started to, I went back and forth in and out of the golf business. I was a golf professional, and I hurt my shoulder a couple times, and so I started selling life insurance and annuities. He goes, when are you going to take your test? I go, I can't take my test. I haven't studied for a test in 30 years. But he showed me. He sat with me, and he said, there's websites that teach you how to take tests. And, I would take the mock tests, and he said, you pass 70, 80% plus. And so eventually I got my license, and I was doing well, right? I was self-supporting through my own contributions. And then the artery graft that I got when I was 17, I was at my desk one day, and, I got these really bad headaches in my face. My arms started to cramp up. I'm not a doctor, but I've seen enough TV to go, that's not good. So I went through this series of surgeries. I had to go to Johns Hopkins. I had open heart surgery, and they kept cutting me, and I eventually had to go on short-term disability, and I tried to go back, and the stress from the job would just make my face go numb. And I finally walked into my boss and I said, I can't do this. The stress is going to kill me. I'm literally going to die at my desk writing a term policy, and I can't do it. And I went out on disability, and I have ongoing struggles with circulation of blood in my right side of my brain, headaches. So literally, I have to live as much of a stress-free life as I can. I began to pursue some performing arts again. When I went out to LA and I did some background work, I remember in high school, and my mom and I talked about this not too long ago. I wanted to go out for the theater department when I was a sophomore in high school. Back then, it was kind of a sissy thing to do. They made fun of you, and they called you a sissy if you were going out for the theater. And my brothers and my friends, and I walked into the theater department, and the teacher said, "What are you doing here?" Kind of threw some shade on me. I was like, "Wow, I just kind of wanted to go out for theater." And he discouraged me, and I quit, and I left, and I went home. And my mom said, I remember when you came home that day, you're really discouraged and disappointed. So that's been something I've always wanted to pursue. So, I got a chance, you know, to get back into that world. My, I met my current wife online. And when I met her, she goes, "Well, why aren't you doing this?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Acting." I go, "I don't know." So she had an agent and she signed me with her agent, and that's what I do now. I'm a commercial actor. I do a little stand-up comedy and I do commercials. Um, I mean, what a gift, right? What a gift. I tell the new guys that I work with, um, I I am absolutely confident that you can literally do whatever you want. Um, so what do I do today? I look over at my bed. My bed is made. Um, I have guys that call me in the morning. I got a 9 o'clock. I've got a 9:15 and 9:30 because when I start working with somebody, I usually ask them, "What time would you like to call me in the morning?" And I let them pick the time because that's what Roger told me to do. Let them pick the time. And Roger told me to make my bed. I cannot leave the house without making my bed. And I didn't realize at the time how significant that was in my life. It was probably the biggest spiritual uh, action that I've ever done. So in order to prepare for this, I make my bed. I call my sponsor. I took 3 calls coming in. And when I take those calls, it's basically just to talk about, hey, where are we? What are we going to do today? What's the plan? I had my 9 o'clock call. We sometimes we'll talk for 2 minutes and say, all right, man, well, let's pray. And what we do when we pray is like, God, thank you for our sobriety. Thank you for all the challenges that we have in our life. Um, Please continue to guide our thoughts, our actions, and our words so we can be of service. So everything I think, everything I say, and everything I do, I have given up the ability to control any of that. I didn't realize that you could pray for God to guide your thoughts. I didn't even think that was possible. But I have done too much of the other, me using what's wrong with me to determine what the next move is in my life. Done. God, please help me. Guide my thoughts, my actions, and my words. So I make my bed. I make my call to my sponsor. I take calls. I shower. I shave my neck parts. I threw on a little spit shine for the kids. Um, I have to do 6, 7, 8 little tiny things. I feed the cats. I make the coffee. Um, I make sure the room is clean. I have to do all those things just to get to level par with the rest of the world. The rest of the world just kind of pops out of bed and, you know, they seem to know how to do things. Um, Not for me. So I'm 41 years in recovery, coming up on 42, and I still have to do that every day because I don't care how long you've been here. You still have to get up each day. That's why they say one day at a time. One day at a time, I have to take all the information, all the experience that I've gathered and accumulated and apply it to the 1 day capsule that I'm currently in. That's it. It's not magical. It's not special. There's no secret. It does require discipline and continuous action. I recently went through an experience where a dear, dear, sweet friend went out after 19 years, and it broke my heart. And one of the things that I asked him when we had a chance to get alone, and we used to walk together on the boardwalk in Ocean City, we had the chance to go away together, and we were walking. I said, dude, I got to ask you, what happened? Like, what happened? You know, the people that you think will never drink, right? If you've been around long enough, you got somebody right next to you that's your brother, and you've been doing this for a long time, and then one day he calls you and he's crying on the phone and tells you that he drank. I was like, whoa. He said, I hadn't sat down and read the big book with anybody in a couple of years, nose to nose. And I was like, whoa. And that case was true for me in the last couple of years. And I felt this angst. And just recently, I started to work with somebody again. And I got out of the meeting and I was in tears. My, my wife was like, what's the matter? And I said, man, did that feel good? I said, did that feel good? I, I so desperately need to pass it on to the next drunk. I've got, decades of information that was freely given to me, right? How can I not pass that along, right? That's that's the obligation that we have. That is the best part of Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery. And if you're not experiencing that, oh gosh, are you missing out? I can't make you do it, right? I can't make you do it. But man, I'm so glad that that was given to me. Um, Phew. I have a great home group. It's the Tuesday Night Promises group in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I had to go through the whole process of moving out of Ocean City, Maryland, um, Berlin. It was a lovely place. I had a bachelor pad, and my wife was like, "Yeah, you were there for 12 years. That's enough. You know, time to move on. You can't have fun forever." I had no responsibilities, no. Um, Now we live in this beautiful, non-leaking glen. After all the rain, we had to leak for like a year. I have two cats. I'm a dog guy. Cats almost killed me. Um, I have this beautiful life. I do side hustles. I do this acting thing as a side hustle. My parents, my my dad passed away. I guess it'll be 4 years next March. Um, my dad came home on hospice 3:30 in the afternoon. We got him settled into his bed, and I said, "Well, I'll take the first shift." And the guy showed me how to use the morphine dropper. He said every 3 hours, and I set my timer and my alarm. And I got up and I would kiss my dad's forehead and tell him I loved him. I'm sorry that I was such a pain in the ass, and that you know, and the last shot I gave him was 3 o'clock. And I fell asleep for a couple of minutes. And when I woke up, he was gone. I was there for my dad until he took his last breath. I was there for my mom for the next 6 weeks because my sponsor said you're going to need to stay up there and get your mom through the business. He calls it the business of death. Funeral homes, lawyers, I was able to do that. Just so many gifts of the program, showing up for my family, my kids, my friends. Um, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I've had so many surgeries, and so many people tell me that, you know, there's nothing I can do for you anymore. I saw it Eastern, I used to take all these blood thinners and pain meds and my beautiful wife is a Pilates instructor and a model and an actress and a chef and a herbalist. I don't know. I got so lucky, but she said, you don't need all the meds. We can do it with diet. So diet, meditation, prayer, sound bath, Reiki, uh, acupuncture. I don't take a single, I'm not recommending this to anybody. This is what I did. I don't take any blood thinners. I am not on any medication. I am healthy. Um, I exercise. I eat right. I pray. I meditate. One of my guys, Mikey, I don't know if he's still on, but we pray every day. Let the blood flow where it needs to go for my brother Dave. Like, I believe we're 85% water. If I need more blood in my brain, I can pray and meditate that state. Um, I'll end with this. I know we're getting close. I don't care how diminished you are in your life right now. I don't care what you're going through. I don't care how lost, broken that you feel. God's got a plan in your life. Um, Recently, I did a commercial, and it was for Kroger's, and it was for adult undergarments. It was it was awesome. I had to come out and in the studio with you know two cameramen, three clients, and I'm in a diaper, and it was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, how did I get here, right? I mean, talk about ironic. Um, and I hope to one day walk through a Kroger's and see myself on the packaging of an adult diaper. That would be the highlight of my sobriety and my, what does God have planned for you? I have no idea, but I know He's far exceeded my expectations. Um, I think we're getting close. Um, I hope that I've given you a typical AA meeting. The power of the steps, the power of taking spiritual action, and the power of giving it away to the next drunk is just absolutely immeasurable. And so thank you for allowing me to share today. God bless.